We have our guest now, and I just want to bring him in because we're joined by Andrew Cooper, one of the people bringing Raheem Kassam to Australia to speak at the Conservative Political Action Conference. Now, this is an event partly sponsored by the Institute of Public Affairs and Advance Australia, and it's described on its website as a conference for those that despaired at the prospect of a shortened government, controlled by militant unions and influenced by the Greens. Andrew's also the president of Liberty Works. Now, this is a not-for-profit that advocates for a drastic reduction in government control over people's economic and personal lives. Liberty Works lobbies for the right to free speech and for the introduction of pill testing in Australia, and also campaigns against the setting of renewable energy targets. Andrew, thanks for joining us tonight on The Drum.
Thank you, Julian.
Now, why is it that you wanted to bring Mr Kassam out here to speak at your conference?
Well, Raheem Kassam is great mates with Nigel Farage, and the greatest political event in perhaps the last 20 or 30 years is in play right now, and that's Brexit. And they both are intimately involved in Brexit. We want to hear what they've got to say about Brexit. There's a great appetite for Australians to know about Brexit, and we're bringing them out to hear about Brexit.
And what of the objections that have been raised by the likes of, Kristina Keneally, also Pat Dodson, about the nature of his language, his inflammatory tweets, some of the things he said previously about the Quran?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to give a big shout out to Kristina Keneally. She's
helping your
with
publicity?
her intervention in this issue, along with she's helped our publicity. She's ensured the long-term future of CPAC Australia. So thank you, Kristina. In terms of people that make offensive comments, I've got a suggestion for them. Don't listen. Don't come to the conference. Don't worry so much. I mean, where are we going with this conversation? We're banning everyone. I mean, Craig Kelly made a comment just the other day, or yesterday I think it was, where he said if we were to ban everyone that made some sort of offensive tweet, we'd have very few tourists coming to this country. And it's a fair point, don't you think? I mean, goodness me, where does it stop?
Ali, can I bring you in here? Do you want to respond to that?
Look, my issue with this is the hypocrisy. I mean, you want to kick Muslims out of this country because they have said something online, and a lot of conservatives jump up and down because they don't want migrants in this country. And when it comes to our free speech, you're not supportive of it. But you want to say and offend everybody in the world and still want to do it on the highest platform or pulpit you can get. That's a bit of an hypocrisy. So, just afford us the same right, and let's have a proper discussion and have a free speech. So if you want to have a free speech, give it to us as well, and we'll support your free speech. But don't have double standards, just...
Andrew, yes.
Yeah,
Andrew.
Ali, I'd love to have you speak at the Conservative Political Action Conference in CPAC.
Please invite me over. I'll be happy to take the invitation over. Please, I would be happy to come and speak.
Not everyone... Tremendous. Not everyone there believes in... strong immigration. I'm actually a pro-immigration person. So we are having that conversation. And the thing about CPAC is it's for those conversations to be had. And not everyone there is a Liberal Party member. There are other predominantly Conservatives there, but there'll be many others from different political parties there debating and having discussions. So I agree with you and, love to have your thoughts there.
And Andrew, let me tell you, I don't have any issue with your political leaning or political opinion. I would love to engage with you on your opinions, as you engage with me on my opinions, and we could go out and you could have a beer and I'll drink a soft drink. So we could do that. That's not a problem.
It's a love-in on The Drum.
Okay, well, that is what The Drum is about, is having these kinds of conversations. But, Andrew, I want to bring you back to the question of the offensiveness of these tweets and some of these views. Now, I understand completely your argument about where do you draw the line. Some could argue that some of, President Donald Trump's tweets have been found to be offensive by a lot of people. Would there be a question about him entering the country? I mean, that's where we could end up. However, you appear to be shrugging off the nature of those tweets and the things that he said, when he himself has in fact apologised for them and tried to distance himself from them since then. Is it not, is it not part of your responsibility to do the same thing?
Apologise for him?
No, recognise, acknowledge the offensiveness of them, not apologise for him. But you kind of seem to be saying, well, what tweets matter? Well, which ones do matter? Which behaviours would be a problem? That's what I'm asking you. Where's the line?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know, but I don't think Kristina Keneally should be drawing that line. And what troubles me with Kristina Keneally is that she's saying that these tweets are incredibly offensive and his views are quite incredibly offensive. She's spent the last 48 hours repeating those offensive remarks on every sort of television station and radio interview she can get. If they were so incredibly offensive, why is she doing that? No one. Adam mentioned it before. He had never heard of him.
Adam, were
and
they
now
offensive?
She's brought it out into the limelight.
Were they offensive? Were his remarks offensive, Andrew? Yes.
Well, I think, well, certainly certain people took them offensively. I would never say them, and I find them offensive, yes.
Okay.
But I find lots of things offensive, Julia.
Okay. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
But so to say the Quran was fundamentally evil, that's an offensive statement.
If I said to you that I was a lapsed Christian, which I am, and if I said to you that I find Christianity fundamentally evil, should I be subject to travel bans? Where does it stop, Julia?
Okay, so Andrew, what about those Islamic preachers who have not called on for violence but have been banned from coming into Australia because they have said certain things which are offensive to certain people? What about those people? Would you support them coming to Australia and speaking? At a risk of radicalizing people who are not as sane-minded as you are, because not every conservative is as sane-minded as you are. There are some people who would listen to these kind of talks about minorities, about Muslims, and decide to take up a gun and go to a mosque and kill 50 people. What about those? Would you take responsibility of them?
Would I take responsibility? No, I don't. I think if someone's inciting violence, that's quite a different thing to someone who's being offensive.
Demonizing somebody and dehumanizing someone can lead to violence.
Well, I'll take your word on that, but I'm referring to Raheem Kassam and the specifics I don't know about what he said. I find them offensive, and most of us do.
Can I just, I mean, to look at the Act, the Migration Act, the character is not just inciting, the character test is not just inciting violence. It's about general conduct, and it's also to incite discord in the Australian community or a segment in that community, or represent a danger by being liable to be involved in activities that are disruptive to or in violence threatening harm to that community or segment. So it is quite a broad provision.
Yeah, it is.
Andrew, what do you make of other people that have been denied entry in recent years?
I'm personally a free speech advocate.
Chelsea Manning?
Yeah, look, I'm a free speech advocate. I think that what Kristina Keneally and others want to do, the authoritarians in our world, is that they don't trust us to hear things. They don't trust us to make good choices about what we do with our lives. They don't trust us to have the ability to take in information and reject it or debate that person and change their mind. Now, I'm a free speech advocate. I believe in free speech. I granted that some people don't believe in free speech. Kristina Keneally appears to be one of those that doesn't. I sincerely hope, for the sake of the future, that the Kristina Keneallys of the world don't win this argument, because it's very, very important.
Adam?
Well, I just noted you mentioned the Migration Act. I think it's 1959.
Oh,
so that's so the character test, I think, would have been to keep out communists. Surely that's what that would have been about.
Has it not ever been amended since then?
Yeah, but I'm sure the
know.
character test is probably still exactly the same.
You
It's
think?
that old-fashioned language.
Vilify a segment of the Australian
maybe
community?
vilify
That
wouldn't
doesn't
have been
sound
there.
1950.
But nevertheless, I mean, I'm not saying I
that.
even support it. I mean, it's a very arbitrary measure that, it basically gives the minister the right to say no to whoever he likes. I mean, I don't know whether that's a good thing or not.
Correct. Past and present.
I did like the point that Andrew made about, the benchmark of offensive. I mean, if things really are offensive, then, why would we keep repeating these things if they genuinely are offensive? I just think, my point is that the bar for offensive is just being dragged so low that people say things are offensive when they really just want to shut the person down. It's not really about whether it's offensive or not. That's just a great word to use.
Is this about cancellation or non-platforming, do you think?
For me, it comes down to non-platforming. So I think it is an opportunity to say, no, we don't want to give that conversation and that voice a seat at the table in Australia. Like, it's a choice that we can choose that. And I think in this instance, it is the right choice because, yes, it's not inciting violence, but I mean, you just read the legislation. I think it ticks a lot of those boxes. And
you think the question is where the community standards are and if they've in fact changed with respect to interpretation of that too.
Oh, look, I think that, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if there was any polls coming back around, like, how does my position reflect across the rest of Australia? Because from my perspective, yeah, there is a line, and from my perspective, I feel like it's been crossed. So it'd be interesting to see how common that feeling is across Australia.
Sam,
can I just add?
I would suggest...
oh, sorry, Sam's just speaking. No, sorry, Sam.
Could I just also suggest that, you know, the idea of offence and where we draw the line around offence, you know, the people who should be actually making decisions around, you know, when it's offensive or not are the people who are being targeted, not the main group. So it's all very well for people to, you know, for me as a white person to turn around and say, oh, well, you know, Aboriginal people just have no right to, you know, to feel offended about that. They could just turn off Twitter. And when it actually impacts on your life in a day-to-day thing, you know, as a disabled person, those attitudes that we have about us being dole bludgers, this idea of dole bludgers, you know, when we have this very low safety net that we all contribute to in case somebody loses a job or becomes ill or whatever, you know, we're now demonising people who are living in poverty and saying that they're doing it for benefits or something. So, you know, so that whole idea means that, you know, people are not given jobs. People are surprised if I say that I have a job, if I have children, because I'm a disabled person and I'm expected to be a person who lives in poverty and a person who is in that particular subset of people, and therefore I'm going to be treated like that. So that idea of who judges where offence lies, I think is,
right.
You know, is wrong.
That should be one of the central tenets of it in terms of who sits at the judging table. Andrew, you wanted to jump in earlier.
I was just going to say that we all judge where offence lies, and we can choose to take offence, and if we do, we've got choices. We can debate the person, or we can turn around and walk off. And if enough people turn around and walk off, Raheem Kassam will never come to this country. But quite the opposite has happened. And what Kristina Keneally is trying to do is, of course it doesn't mean he's right, Ali. Of course not. But how will we know? How will we know if we don't hear what he has to say? And how will we know if we'll have others that will debate him?
Well, I hope you have a balanced conversation. You don't have a one-sided conversation in a closed room with a bunch of conservatives. I hope you have a balanced conversation, especially when it comes to Islam and Muslims, because that's what's lacking in your circles, I think.
Andrew, how many Muslim speakers do you have at the conference before you asked Ali?
Oh, before we asked Ali,
yes.
I don't think we've got any Muslim speakers. I've got an ex-Muslim speaker.
Okay,
speaking.
Well, there we go.
So it's not really balanced, Andrew. It's one-sided conversation.
There's an opportunity, but we really appreciate your time, Andrew. Andrew, we have to leave it there, but thanks so much, and we'll look forward with interest to how the conference plays out.